in order to maintain a methodology open to contamination and to a very strong attention on every aspect of the intervention. Other colleagues are arriving, and Michela Cardinali is the director of our conservation laboratories, and other people that you can see here are conservators. Paola Buscaglia is the head of the wooden sculpture laboratory, and so is particularly involved in our project together with other colleagues. And Paola Manchino is our art historian. And so we are very, very happy and also very curious to listen to your lesson. And thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for the welcome, and thank you for the introduction.
So quickly, I just introduced to the group and to the people online. One thing, Puay-peng, is that we are recording the meeting. I hope that is fine. It's just for our records. So Puay-peng Ho holds the UNESCO Chair of Architectural Heritage, Conservation and Management in Asia, and is currently Professor of Architecture and Head of Department of Architecture in School of Design and Environment, National University of Singapore. He received architecture education from the University of Edinburgh and practiced professionally in Edinburgh and Singapore. Subsequently, Puay-peng Ho obtained PhD degree in Art and Architecture History at the School of Oriental and African Studies, University of London. The main research and publication focus on Puay-peng Ho is the areas of Buddhist art and architecture, Chinese architectural history, vernacular architecture, and history of modern architecture in China and Hong Kong. Sustaining his research is the quest to understand religious culture and his architectural forms, which is, of course, extremely related to what we are trying to do, not only on the restoration part, but also on the show, which, as we were saying yesterday, Puay-peng, is really a display of the works, which actually creates continuous sort of lectures and and readings of cultural value, religious value, artistic value, but also emotional value, that is relation of the connection between audiences and objects. He directed more than 100 conservation heritage projects in Hong Kong as conservation consultant. For the contribution to the profession, he was appointed as Justice of the Peace by the government. Currently, Professor Ho is appointed as an advisor to Museum of History in Hong Kong, Heritage and Identity Partnership in Singapore, a patron of the International Dunhuang Project, which only that I really would like to, have hours of discussion with you. When it's going to come, we're going to talk about it. Dunhuang is one of the most iconic Buddhist moments of entering. I'm vulgarizing a bit, of entering of Buddhism into main China. Is located in this very remote area in between, let's say, the Silk Road outskirts entering China, and it's one of the most incredible places that testifies how Buddhism, from the Silk Road and from India before that, entered China, from an aesthetic point of view, religious point of view, and philosophical point of view, and it's also been discovering not only incredible artifacts but also secret texts, and it was really very fundamental to understand the complexity of the life and exchange between the Far East, represented by China, but also Korea and Japan, and of course, the Western religious and philosophy, which is Buddhism. From a point of view of China, Buddhism is not an Oriental religion; it's actually Western religion. So, British Library and member of Senior Advisor Board, Global Heritage Fund, and is an editorial board member of several international academic journals. So I think that you are the man for the job, Puay-peng Ho. We didn't need to have this, to understand that. And without further ado, I just let you, give us a bit of introduction. This is only, to touch base basically with you and for the team here to understand how precious is, what we are doing with these objects, which are from the collection of MAO, never been exhibited, never been studied before. And so it's for us a very precious moment, to understand also the complexity of cross-cultural exchange and cross-cultural background. So to you, thank you very much.
Thank you, David. I think this is an honor to be speaking to you, and I look forward to further collaborations, especially my visit to Torino in July, and that I think will be helpful for us to touch base on several projects, possible projects as well, and also for conservation work, both in Singapore and maybe somewhere else. So I think this is really a great opportunity for me to be connected. And we did talk yesterday with David, and obviously what I put together today is something to really highlight the context of the Buddhist sculptures that you have assembled at MAO, and also to explore a little bit about conservation issues of this project, of these images. So this is my title. I will use a bit of materials from Dunhuang as well, but I also show some examples in monasteries around China. Maybe the period will be slightly earlier than what we see at MAO, but I think will be comparable for our discussion. So you can see the slide turn.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so I received a set of 8 PowerPoints from David. I think it's fantastic. They are very clear. They show the images very well, and some of the images that is shown here include individual images of arhats on the left, Bodhisattva in the middle, Buddha, and maybe arhats again on the far right. And so these are images that you see both at MAO and maybe many other such images dispersed around major museums around the world. And I'm just thinking about the museum at Ribberg or museum at Guimet in Paris, the Ribberg in Zurich, having so many images. However, I think yours is a bit more special because it's not, as David kept emphasizing, this is not an imperialistic collection. And so I think that's really wonderful. And at the same time, your collection has a lot of wooden statues, which is also fantastic. So obviously, I share with David's identification and also with his vision for the study and for the exhibition, and I think that's really a fantastic approach, meaning that we look at images not from or purely from aesthetic point of view, but actually from various aspects of some of these images and how they relate to us today. So when I plan my own exhibition, I would really want the images to talk to us in a certain way. So obviously you can do a stylistic or iconographic study as well as narrative, but I think the more important is to make the images really speak to us in our contemporary world. So I think I'll start with, I know David is also planning some Gandhara pieces to come to MAO, and I think we need to discuss the nature of religion as Buddhism, whether it is a philosophy, and later when it developed in India, in Central India, in and also other or eastern part, northeastern part of India, as well as in northwestern part of India, in the Gandhara region, currently partly Pakistan, where images appear, modeling on probably certain prototypes from Greek or other places. And this becomes a very important turning point in Buddhism, from the early Buddhism of self-practice and self-realization of the truth and self-liberation from the world. So it's more practice and more of thinking and more meditation and more of our own, if we use the Western term, salvation, personal salvation, to something that is more on a massive scale, that everybody would be able to get some form of deliberation and some form of delivery from the liberation and delivery from the suffering of this particular world. And that is what we call Mahayana Buddhism, and that is that coincided with the appearance of images like what you see here of the two forms of Buddha, sitting and standing Buddha. And so images becomes an object not of copying, or not an object for following, say, in the footsteps of the master, of the guru, but images becoming objects of veneration, of worship. Again, another Western term. And so the idea of images being central to the religion, to the belief system, and to the ritual of the practitioner becomes really quite important around the 1st century, 2nd century CE. And so these are some of the images. Now, obviously, from Gandhara, as you can see from the left here, moving into currently Xinjiang province, into China, and into, say, Dunhuang, which is at the gateway between proper China to the western part of the China, or currently China, but in those days would be small countries along the two sides or the rim of Taklamakan Desert. So Dunhuang is really at the somehow the beginning of
I just showed them.
Oh, you just showed it them. Okay, great. So it's somewhere here. And then the Silk Road, or this is what, yeah, what German scholar call the Silk Road, goes all the way down to Xi'an, which is Chang'an today, or Xi'an today, but Chang'an at that time, which is the capital of China proper. And so this transmission of everything from goods, trading, objects, to religion, to practices, to images, to scriptures, all came through that route. And therefore, together with that, you find images in China, like in Bingsi. This is much later in the 7th century, or earlier images like this in Cave 169 in Bingsi, where sculptures were carved into the rock face, as some of you can see over here, but also in stucco images, clay images that are erected over here. And this is a fantastic cave, because this is one of the earliest cave, I think, for Buddhism in China, and the cave is almost like natural, and so images were placed on top, and some of these are around here, and this from Bingsi in China. It's about the 4th century, as you can see, and comparable to some of the images that you see in India from 5th or 6th century, in terms of its form, its construction, and its symbolism, I think. And so that's probably one of the earliest caves that you can see in China, and that develops into other caves of the later period, like this one here, as well as in Dunhuang, which is this one here. Now, the earliest 3 caves of Dunhuang, 268, 272, 275, can be dated to about late 5th century. And the caves are essentially quite rectangular or squarish, with only one image at the end of the cave. So if this is the entrance in cave 272, coming in from the east, the west wall has just one image, and seated like this with very similar feature, as you can see from another area in India, Mathura. And so this is the Buddha seated, and you can see that the rest of the caves were decorated with paintings of maybe a musician in heaven and other beings in heaven. And likewise in 275, a very similar period, a Maitreya, the Buddha of the future, seated in the middle, whereas some other images were seated on top on the side wall. So these are the earliest demonstration of Buddhist sculptures, and that developed into the 6th century into caves that are more complicated, with a bit more iconographic programming, as well as worshipping style. And so this is a central pillar in cave 254 of the 6th century. This is the entrance coming in through this portal, and you first face the pillar, which has a Maitreya in the center, which is the future Buddha. And what you do in ritual is to go around circumambulating the central image or the central pillar in a clockwise direction. So you do this 3 times, and with this, you are able to sort of worship the Buddha and many other Buddhas that are related to Buddhism. So around here, and other deities that are related to Buddhism, as well as some stories, right? The stories of the previous life of the Buddha. So this is a very early form of ritual, as well as layout of the interior of a cave. And on the west wall, at the center behind the pillar, you have the white robe Buddha seated in the middle. That is probably a painted version of the Buddha, the Gandhara Buddha, as you can see on the left, sitting on a lion's throne. And if you can see, I don't know whether it's clear enough, but at the bottom you have these little figures. These are the donors. And so the excavation of this cave, the making of the images and the painting of stories of Buddhas, of 1,000 Buddhas, this all were sponsored by the local, usually the local donors that are painted over here. And this is for merit, meaning that if I paint a sponsor the painting of a Buddha, I will gain certain merits. And with this merit, we have you can accumulate, and with this merit, you are able to go into so-called heaven, and with this merit, you are able to be liberated from this life. And these are all the wishes at that time, especially the 5th, 6th, 7th centuries that we can see on text behind steles and behind images. Now, when it comes to the Sui dynasty, which is in the 7th century or early 7th century, you begin to see assembly of different images. So these images are not just the Buddha alone, nor the Buddha with 1 or 2 other bodhisattva, like this one here. This is Maitreya in his heaven with 2 other or 4 other bodhisattva on the side, but with Heavenly King, this one here and this one here, and attending bodhisattva on the side, and then musicians on top in this particular architectural setting. And so you begin to see the proliferation of images. And these images, if we look at the Catholic equivalent, might be heavenly, maybe saints, or maybe angels, or maybe archangels, or maybe apostles. Right? So some of this are depicted together with the Buddha, but they may not be exactly the same or cannot be equate to what we can draw references from Catholicism, but they were quite central to the worship of the devotee They are center of ritual. They are the center for worship. They are center for meditative practices, but they are also center for offering, for donation, right? So if you paint, if you sculpt, you will get merit. And so it's actually many things into one, and obviously a lot of prayer. If we look at that in Western term or Christian term, a lot of prayer are offered to some of these images. And this is in the mid or late 7th century. And you can see in here, you have the Buddha, you have the two Bodhisattvas, and two more Bodhisattvas, but also two disciples on the side. And so this becomes the standard around that time. And the Bodhisattva can be really very well sculpted. And this is of the same cave with decoration, for example, on the rope from Sasanian. So that kind of roundel, as you can see on the rope itself, might be influenced from Sasanian culture, as well as some of the beads here, as you can see on the side. And so these are attending Bodhisattva. You don't pray to them, but they are helping to mediate between the Buddha and our world. And so many of these are around. When you come to actual monastery, very few of the early monasteries remains to this day. I'm introducing a few, but very quickly. So this is Nanshan Monastery in Shanxi. I note that some of your sculptures might be from Shanxi province. So this is a very interior landlocked province in China, not far from Beijing. In the past, it takes about many days, or when I travel from Beijing by train to this place, it takes about 18 hours. But recently, if you take the highway, it's about 3 hours from Beijing, right? So very close now. And it's from the 8th century, 782, the building itself. But what is astonishing are the images in this particular small temples. Altogether, there are 17 images, including the Buddha himself in the middle, the two Bodhisattva, the younger, the older one, attending Bodhisattva on the side, praying Bodhisattva in the front, and then two major Bodhisattva on the side here, sitting on a lion is Manjushri, and sitting on an elephant is Samantabhadra. And there are also people who help to hold the rein of the animals of the lion and elephant, and then two young boys represents the reborn being into his paradise over here. And then there's a pair of bodhisattvas and a pair of attendants. And so this is an image that you see. And it's actually it fills up the whole of the interior of the hall. And again, the worship is like going around in circumambulation, very similar to the Catholic practice. And you can also pray right in front of this particular Buddha. And these are some of the images that I took very early on in 1987, before many of you were born. And you can see the Buddha seated here, and the major Bodhisattva, the Samantabhadra and Manjushri over here, and two images of the Bodhisattva on the side, and also of the general, the guardian to the whole assembly. So all this function, all this in a very small monastery, will be all grouped into one group on the platform, and some the disciple at the back, and another attending Bodhisattva. Unfortunately, the painting on the statues were more contemporary, and therefore some of the colors might not be totally accurate, but this is what you see inside the hall. This is another one that's slightly later, Zhenguo Monastery, also from Shanxi province. And in this, again, the color may not be exactly correct, but this particular image shows you the two major bodhisattva, the attending bodhisattva, and the two guardians on the outer corner, and the two disciples on the side of the main Buddha. Again, it's like a very, very tight interior, because the monastery is not very big, and so you can go circumambulate around in this fashion, and then you can also pray right in front of the Buddha himself. I'm showing this one because this is one that you see, at least for this particular monastery, that you separate the function of the of various statues or Buddha or Bodhisattva into different buildings. And so these two buildings are from the 10th century, the gate over here, and then a pavilion or the tower at the back. And so this is the gate, and the tower is at the back. So you have to come through the gate into the courtyard, and then into the tower. And then there are other buildings on the side. Most of them were much later, and but they were in the original period. They were also housing different statues or different images. So meaning that the images are no longer grouped in one big group like 17, 15 or whatever into the center of the hall, but many different Buddhas occupied, or Bodhisattva occupied different halls within the monastery. And so the Buddha image will become bigger and occupying the whole of the center. I'm showing you this first one, which is the gate over here. And if you can see on either side of the gate, you have the two guardians. And the two guardians probably were situated at the front in order to guard the monastery. Now, for Buddhists, in a way, not as important as in Christianity. For the Buddhists, the monastery is like a sacred realm, and so this sacred realm is sort of demarcated from the rest of the city or the rest of the mountains, or in nature, and this is a very important concept. So the sacred realm, both the larger monastery as well as the smaller hall, they are all part of this sacred territory of the Buddha. And this is recorded in the scripture. And so the scripture talks about this. Now, obviously, you have equivalents of Moses seeing God, and God say that, now this is a holy ground. Take off your shoes. You should not come near, and so on, right? And so it's in that sense, the guardians at the front would be guarding the sacred realm, and so this realm would be protected. And so when you go in, you have to put on a different kind of attitude and so on. And these are the two probably the earliest guardian figures that remains in China to this day, from the 10th century, late 10th century, 982, around that time. And I see the two in MAO, and obviously we need to discuss the provenance and so on. But this images was supposed to be guarding the monastery, or in the early examples that I show you, guarding the Buddhist assembly on the platform in the temple. And so this is on the right is the gate building, on the left is the tower, and the tower is very, very tall because in it there's a 30-meter tall Avalokiteshvara, which is the Bodhisattva of mercy, of compassion, with 11 heads on top, 10 on top and 1 here. So altogether 11 heads. And so the hall was only for this particular Bodhisattva of compassion, Avalokiteshvara. And then you go in, you know exactly why you come into this particular building, and it's because of the mercy and compassionate nature of our Avalokiteshvara, who will help us through his scripture, through his power, to save us from different dangers in the world, but also will bring us to the Western paradise. And here there's a window. If you notice this particular opening, which is a doorway, this is where he looked out, right? So he actually looked out of the window or the doorway to the world, and he's able to help everyone in this world. One other monastery, which is a very small one and a very, very remote one. In this particular province, Shanxi, you have many early monasteries preserved because of the mountainous nature of the province. But because of the mountain, most of these monasteries are very small, like this one in Qingliangshi, which is like dates to Song Dynasty of the 11th century. And I have a very bad pictures of it. Sorry about that. It's all overexposed. But you can see the inside, the Buddha in the middle. There are 4 bodhisattvas on the side and 2 disciples next to it. So it's a very simplified version, very much like what we saw in earlier 7th century example or 8th century example, where the whole assembly occupied the central platform. This is an image from the book, but in any case, I think it's a very wonderful illustration of the 11th century, 12th centuries layout, but also images from that period. And so they all sit on the pedestal and having different hand gesture or mudra. And this is the young disciple. So these are the few that remains. There should be another older disciple on this side, and maybe another could be another bodhisattva. But anyway, so basically 5 or 7. And I look at it and compare to the image in or images in MAO, and as you can see, the image of the Buddha or even the Bodhisattva in this particular example in the 11th century, it's very rounded and very I mean plump or much more rich, and even the hand, as you can see, the palm is quite meaty, and the body is quite full. And I'm not talking about wine, the full body, but it's really quite a substantial image. And we can also see the way the robe, the monk's robe, pleated down below here, as you can see here. And you can compare to some of the pleating of the robes, as you can see in this particular examples. The headdress is a bit more ornate, and obviously you have in these 2 bodhisattva a square hollow at the back of the image for auspicious and for sacred relics or scriptures, and also for the donor to write down why they donated money to make this image, so that they can be reborn into the Pure Land or the paradise in the West. So this is another look. And this is a young disciple in this particular image, which is this one here. And I would like to use that one to compare to both the Buddha image that you have, which obviously is of a slightly later period, but you can see the head. You can't see the head here. No. Okay. The headdress that is, or the hair in the head of the Buddha that has very pronounced hair with this curl, and they sort of are hearts probably, but very much like a disciple that you see as a monk in that particular image. Now, obviously, there are other monasteries from, say, the 11th century, like this one here in Zhenting and Nongxingshi. This monastery also contains a Buddha image in the middle here, and then an image of a Guanyin or Avalokiteshvara seated in this particular posture in kind of landscape setting. So you have the other bodhisattva represented by just the animal. So the lion representing Manjushri, the elephant representing Samantabhadra, with water down below represented and mountain over here. So this is the mountain of the abbot or the place of residence of Avalokiteshvara in China, which is Mount Putuo, or an island of Putuo. And this particular gesture, or this particular form, or iconography, is probably quite similar to this one here in MAO, where the Bodhisattva really seated in a very easy kind of posture, and with that kind of easiness, right? Very similar to this one here, except that the style probably slightly later. And the last example in China is this one here in Shandong. It's a Thousand Buddha Hall from Lingyan Si in Shandong. And this one is a big monastery, and a very, very famous one. The hall may date to 1061, but might be rebuilt in the 16th century. The hall, this is taken actually by Japanese explorer Sekino around 1920s, and this one is the monastery itself, and the surrounding the site of this hall, you have the arhats or the lohan surrounding, seated at the foot of the wall, and around 40 arhats or lohan can be seen. 32 are probably from the first time when the building was built, and 8 from a later period in the 16th century. And so you can see some of this that are these are stucco images, so not a wooden image, but stucco with smooth surface, so that you can paint over and sculpted and paint over. And some of this would be very, very similar to the two arhats that we have in MAO, with the kind of different hand gesture. Well, obviously, this is in wood rather than in stucco like this one here, but they are usually lining the side of the hall, and that's why you can see this sitting posture. So it's sort of seated on the platform here, with the feet coming down, or without, because of the posture. So this one is one leg down, and really quite beautiful. Right. But I would like to go on to talk about a bit about conservation issues, and this I go back to Japan. There are 2 or 3 examples I will be showing. This is Tosho Daiji, the painting of the monastery itself in Japan in the 17th century. And so you can see the main hall over here. Now, why this particular monastery? This is the main hall that I would like to highlight. It is because the hall itself was probably built in the 8th century, and the hall itself has images from that period. And the design of the hall, as well as the images, probably came from craftsmen who travel with a master or a high monk from China, the southern part of China, Yangzhou, to Japan, to Nara, and the setting up of this particular monastery by the emperor. I cannot take pictures inside, so some of these are from books. And you can see in here, there are 3 major images. The Buddha in the middle, another Buddha on the side, and then another Avalokiteshvara on the further side. So these are all. This is slightly different. These are not wooden images. These are images that that's like leather, and you carve on the leather or on the lacquer. Sorry, on the lacquer, and so you have layers upon layers of the hemp cloth, and you paint the lacquer on top, and so it's a lacquer images the core is empty, so you took out the core. But the other one that is also very important is this one in also in Nara, Muroji, of the slightly later period, early 9th century, because in here you have an assembly of various images, 5 main ones, and supposed to be 28 at the bottom here. That are really very, very well preserved and well kept. And as you can see, some of these are really fantastic images. And when they preserve them, these are the wooden images. They would preserve the texture. They would also preserve the crack, and they would also preserve the coloration. And you can see the wood grain that is preserved. Now, I suppose in this 11-headed Avalokiteshvara, it was painted before, and you can see pigments of paints over here. But because this is from the 8th century, and after so many thousands of years, the paints had peeled off, and therefore what they did was to keep whatever there are on the images, rather than repaint them over, not like the Chinese examples, and really appreciate the loss of the color, but instead appreciating the grain of the wood that you can see over here, and the 12 divine genres as well, from the 13th century. In this case, the colorations are still quite, the pigments are still quite visible, but again, they just conserve the whatever pigments that are left, rather than going over again. The last one is just to bring all this together, which is a modern monastery that I designed in Hong Kong, or 2018, not 2028. Sorry, the date is wrong. And this is in Hong Kong, and it's a beautiful site facing the sea with the mountain at the back, and it has main halls, 3 main halls, and then another hall over here, and then a very tall, 76-meter tall statue of Avalokiteshvara over here. So in this case, my design was to follow quite closely the kind of disbursement of different images in different halls for different purposes. And so for the main entrance, I have 2 images of the guardians. They are in bronze. And then there's another hall, but this is the last hall, the main hall, where the glory or the idea of Buddhist truth can be revealed by this simplicity of the architecture, as well as the simplicity of the images. The main Buddha with the 2 disciples, gilded bronze images, as well as bronze images of arhats on the side, as you can see here. So the practice of some of this image making and rituals continued to this modern time. And the last image is the image of another form of Avalokiteshvara that is really quite leisurely, as you can see, seated on the lotus throne with one leg or one knee raised, and the right arm rested on it, and really quite a beautiful image. And that is before you go into the last image, which is a 76 meters tall Avalokiteshvara for compassion and mercy. And so this is the end of my presentation. What I wanted to do is really to go through some of the images to give you the setting for the images, the purpose for making these images, and also showing some Japanese examples for how images, especially wooden images, are being conserved in Japan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Have I stopped share?
Sorry?
Have I stopped sharing?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So finally we can see your face properly. So thank you for the wonderful presentation. I cannot hide the fact that, you know, when you start showing the images of Billingsi, which was one of my first trips to China when I was a student, it's
Wow.
been a bit of a, no, we are talking about 1991, you know. So,
Oh, okay. Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Because my major was on Tibetan architecture, actually. So I lived in the area in Lanzhou and in Gansu.
Did you follow Tucci?
I follow a bit Tucci, yes, in a very humble way, though. But I was based in Labrang in Xiahe for a couple of years, and it was right at the moment where monasteries were rebuilt after the Cultural Revolution. So I did. I eventually can actually send some images to you if you want to, because I have all this documentation that it's been sitting there, you know, but I didn't use anything, you know, for now 30 years. Anyway, just to go, you know, we are very happy that you're gonna come here, and we have already some ideas for your visits as well. And you will see also the images and the objects, you know, here live when you come, and of course the collection as well. It's interesting that you show also some Japanese images. We have a very nice Edo collection, actually, of Buddhist sculptures from Japan. Which is probably the best part of the Japanese collection we have. And Venaria also work on a particular sculpture from the 13th century of a guardian from Japan. That's one of the very rare pieces, you know, preserved. So that you're gonna see live. So we're gonna talk about that later. But since you're here, and the team is actually, you know, is gonna start working, you know, on restoration, I leave to the technical people, you know, not me, to maybe ask questions which will be much more relevant for their work.
Okay, sure.
Michela, whoever wants to.
Vado. Ok.
Magari togli la maschera.
Sì, certo. Pleased to meet you and thank you for your lesson. Do you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay. I have a lot of questions, just because a lot.
I hope I can answer them.
I hope. Just well, concerning your presentation, I'm curious to know if it's common in iconography of Buddhism to represent Buddhas or body. I feel only I have perceived only Buddhas with black skin or golden skin, gilded skin.
Yes.
Normally, we should find them with the black skin. Do you know, or do you think that this attitude could be linked to an imitation of bronze?
No. It is part of the iconography of the Buddha that the color of the skin is golden in color, and so they are usually represented with golden skin. So that's a very good point. But that is usually in the iconography. It is said that the Buddha has 32 major signs and 80 minor signs. So if you look at the Buddha itself, you can see if it is a Buddha sculpted in accordance to this particular kind of instruction. Right? And so golden color skin is one of them. Yes.
Okay. And could it be possible to find different layers of colors, for example, starting from the skin, related to different levels of illumination or something like this?
I think if there are no later restoration, the color would be layered, but you just have the underlay, which usually are white, and then you have the golden color or even gold leaves placed on top. Yeah.
Okay. And do you think there's some symbolism in clothes, in layering colors for clothes, or not?
Not necessarily. So the clothes are usually, especially the Buddha, patterned after the kasaya or the monk's robe that monks will wear, and so the colorations are usually quite simple, and in most cases you might have a trim along the side of the robe, and that trim will be a bit more colorful than the robe itself. And it also depends on style as well as period of time. And remember, I talked about the two bodhisattvas having this robe that has this round pattern that resemble the Sasanian kind of decorative pattern. And so that's one of the possibility of, but symbolism, no, not really. So in some say early period or even a later restoration, they painted dragons on the trim, which I mean I'm not too sure whether that's original. So the colors are a bit hard to say. Usually probably more bluish, greenish kind of color.
Okay. And I confess I'm a little scared about the issue of cleaning these sculptures, just because I noticed that most of them have different layers of colors, completely different from one each other. And I read that mainly is to be is to be understood what is Oriental and reproducing the ancient technique just to protect the intangible heritage as a representation of your tradition.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
do you have any suggestion or materials just to recognize what is Oriental, possibly?
I mean, your conservation center, I think, would be the world authority on how to do this. What material?
From tradition, I don't know, some particular kinds of clays, or I don't know, in China are used. Is documented something?
Yeah, from tradition, it's maybe I can say this, and then maybe we can discuss. Traditionally, images were not like a sacred image that you keep forever and ever, or from one generation to another generation. Not in that sense of sacredness. In the tradition, especially in say early period of Buddhism in China, there's also a tradition of sacred objects or sacred image or true image of a certain bodhisattva or of the Buddha. And so the image of the Buddha is said to be true because it was patterned after his own image, right? And that is really quite interesting. But then that concept are usually remain in the early period and not in the later period. So in the later period, if I have a better image, I will replace the older image. And so restoration of images are not so well recognized. Right? And we have many images that we see from Shandong, for example, that were discarded because they were all donated. And so after the donations or the family pass away or whatever, and there will be new donation, and then there's no more space, the new donation will take the place of the old donation, and the old images were somehow discarded or buried together in a kind of compound. And so it's that kind of renewal. And so to actually repaint an image is not so so common, right? Because the merit is for making new images, not merit is not for conserving an old image, right? So
Okay.
conservation has no value or religious value in that sense.
Okay, but do you think that it could be possible to not for preservation, but just to use a sculpture, the wooden part of the sculpture, possibly it might have some layers of colors fragmented with losses and so on, and then the merit of repaint it could be not substituting, but just substituting the colors.
Can I?
Yeah, David, maybe you want to join.
Can I just I think what can I say? The interesting part about the sculptures that we have in the collection, which are here, they also have layers of colors because, I mean, we guess, you know, and then it's going to be the conservator to check that, but they don't come eventually from, especially the Arabs, they don't seem coming from very, let's say, very refined sort of temples. And also some of the latest one, the more, you know, meaty ones that you were talking about, that they should be late Ming, but late Ming is anything really. You know?
Yeah, so, I know.
What is interesting is actually the coloring, you know, as well. The looks like also done in relationship not only to the traditional way, but also into a taste of collecting, or, you know, how these objects came to Europe, you know, and how they were collected, which time, you know, when the collection was put together. They're all, you know, tastes, you know, of that actually, that I can say they're broader than the original meaning of the sculptures.
Yes, yes.
And so one of the things which is also extremely interesting as well, and then Paula, I think she's, you know, trying to exploring with you, is where to stop the cleaning and which kind of level, you know, to consider enough to get into that. And for me, it's also extremely interesting in terms of how we're going to display the works, you know, and how we can actually face different kind of restoration, you know, and which are scientific, but they give out a complete different result in terms of the emotional result of, you know, of the image itself.
Yeah.
Does it make sense? Okay.
Perfectly expressed. What he said.
Yeah, thanks, David. I think that's fantastic. My inclination would be to preserve and stabilize the layers that you see currently, and maybe interpret it by just showing those different layers, and that will probably be the only intervention I will do on the sculpture. Right? So it's more the narrative that we can discuss, as David said, how we put the narrative together about those images. Yeah.
Even if maybe the last layer could be referring to a super modern intervention.
Yes.
Yes, I will just do that. Yeah, I'll keep them as
It's
they
different.
Which is so exciting actually, because it reveals a complete different idea.
Different, yes.
Yes.
And I think it was very revealing when you were talking about the fact that objects are not about the past, but it's always about the future, you know, and this
The
idea
temple.
of replacement
Not in a museum.
of the objects.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
yeah.
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 but also in a museum or?
Sorry, what do you say?
Sorry.
I can't hear you.
I'm Valeria Moratti, and
Hi.
I ask you a thing. Also in a museum or in a temple, you take, and obviously you maintain the last finisher, and in the museum you can really change your mind or not, because change also the significance of the sculpture, the religion sculpture, you know, because we have the same for our for item or child, virgin and child, for example.
Yes.
How do you think?
Yeah, I mean that's a very important question. How do we look at religious objects in a museum? And so we also had some exchanges of ideas yesterday with David, and and in a way I think the museum is a kind of artificial environment. But how do you make that artificial environment relevant to the experience of people seeing those images? That I think is the key, and obviously you can do many things in the museum that you cannot do in a church or in a temple, and so with that, whether our focus and our educational objective is to show the original nature and the original purpose of the images, or maybe the contemporary meaning. So I think there's sort of multi-layers of interpretation.
Very difficult.
Yeah, very difficult, but I think we can try as many layers as we can in our interpretation. So rather than um, uh, going to say Sistine Chapel and look at the paintings and think about the story behind. Uh, 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 in the museum, you're able to do a lot more to highlight certain aspects of the meaning of the ritualistic as well as religious kind of association of the image, and that is one way to relate the image to the viewer, to the visitor. Do I make sense?
For me, you completely do. Which is also why we are overexcited, and also yesterday when we talked about it, right? That this complexity of displaying, objects and revealing, all the different layers in the particular and not on the overall. It's not about trying to create a complete box, but focus on that particular sort of aspects, and then doing continuously in using different options and displays qualities.
Yeah. No, I mean when I look at Redbird and the images that they display in the new hall, not so new now. The images are laid out like one after another, and you just read them. Oh, this is from this particular cave. This is from this particular period. There's no attempt to relate the images to viewers, right? Especially viewers who are not from the East, not from China. Even people from China would not understand those images at all, right? And so in a way, when I designed the monastery in Hong Kong, the images would have certain meanings within that context, within that setting, and within the pathway as you move, right, from one hall to another hall to another hall. And so I think in a museum setting, this would be much easier to create this particular educational aspect, but also more difficult because what do you do to present this multi-layer meaning? Yeah.
just another comment which I think we were talking about before, but is also interesting in this kind of research and especially in the museum context, you know, which can be not necessarily a white box Western idea, you know, of that kind of museum. But what I'm particularly interested with these objects as well is to enhance the performative aspects of them. The religious objects which are performed from a point of view of religious people coming and worshiping, but also as a medium itself, you know, and it was very interesting what you were saying at the beginning, and I think it's very important for this team to understand that Buddhism comes from a complete abstract sort of representation, and it actually became a multitude of images, you know, entering entering China through the Silk Road, right? So that kind of multiplication of images, but also the fact that the image became a medium really also as not only as a medium, as I can say a substance, but a medium actually as a transcendent way to approach the divinity of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas.
Yeah.
And I really feel that practitioners, you know, and contemporary practitioners, they have and they can have an incredible contribution in performing, you know, the objects also to audiences. And I don't know if you know the artist Li Mingwei from Taiwan. So it's coming in November.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and because it's going to be a long-term resident in the museum.
I see.
Yeah, and so it's going to come here as well. and Li Mingwei and Cai Jiawei from Taiwan, both are very much related to Buddhist, you know, sort of aspects, but they perform it, you know, and they sublime it, you know, in a practitioner point of view. And I think there is a great contribution to study about that, you know, in order also to relate objects in the context of museum, but also in the relationship with audiences and understanding of objects.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's wonderful. Yeah.
So just to let you know that, you know, in the show, that's going to be also part of, you know, the display of things.
Yeah.
And any other questions? Because I mean, I'm so grateful that you're coming to us in July, so very in a very short time, and then it will be a much more productive way, you know, to also look at the objects in person and see how to work on that.
Yes.
Keeping in mind that the opening of this show in October is actually only the beginning, you know, of what I hope can be a continuous, you know, progressive way of approaching, of course, the topics that you touched upon today. So I don't know if you have any kind of very sort of important questions about materials, and I mean, you've been.
I'm just
Go.
curious. Just understand if it makes sense to look for bibliography also related to Coromandel technique, and because I was speaking with Valentina and Francesca that were working on screens made in Coromandel technique. So they explained me that the painted part was carved in layers of clay. So I wonder if it is possible that on wooden sculptures the model part with clays comes from that kind of technique. So should we expect a similar material, painting material on the top? It's made, I'm sorry, different from for binders.
The binders.
This is all clay made.
Okay.
I'm just showing pictures of a rural temple in China. The pictures taken in the. I'm gonna send these images to you.
Okay.
In a second.
Yeah.
Actually, I send it to you now because it's easy. Where they're of course made with stray and earth, basically clay.
Okay, clay. Yeah.
I'm sending it to you. It's a series of pictures taken in the early 80s.
Yes.
Hold on. I'm sending to you on your WhatsApp, Puay-peng.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
So if you go, it's coming to you now.
Yeah,
so,
I see it now.
Yeah,
Wow.
I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th image.
Okay. Yes. Yep.
Yeah. I think that Paula is referring of layers like this one.
Yes. I think in clay you need to layer it bit by bit because then you stabilize it. But there's also with a hem cloth or straws at the lower layers. But with wood, I think it's not layering; it's more carving, and so it's just like modern carving, and so the layerings probably are not there. But however, there are certain wooden sculptures that are also covered with, after the wood is done, covered with hem cloth and with clay again, right? So the wood becomes just the inner core, and that would be another technique. And so maybe we will have to take a look at the sculptures, and then before I can say more. Yeah.
It can be also interesting, Puay-peng, if you can send over some literature about materiality and stuff like that. Maybe have easier access for us. That's from us. Also because unfortunately my Chinese conservator in the museum is in leave for the whole year, so I don't have any conservators in the museum that can do that. Otherwise, it would be very easy, but without using a lot of your time. But just like give some references that we can be allowing us to have a bit more research.
Okay. That will. I mean, I have to take some time to look for them. But if I find any, I'll send it your way. Yeah.
But even some links or some.
Yeah. Sure.
I'm already shared with them the link with the project that Wu Hong has been doing in Tianlushan, because we're gonna have also 2 stone sculptures coming from the 17th. But I'm also very interested in knowing more about the project that you've been doing with the caves. If you have some literature about that or something that you wrote about that or some images, would be very interesting for me to see. And then we can discuss about when you come here.
All right.
What can I say? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
be organized soon. Bye.
Ciao.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Ciao
Thank you.
Fede. Bye.
Bye.
Grazie di avermi inserita. Grazie.
Prego,
Che bello che sei rimasta. Ciao.
Io quando sono stata in Giappone a vedere come restaurano, e ovviamente è tutto diverso da noi, per cui dobbiamo poi tenerne conto, insomma, è proprio un altro approccio totalmente diverso.
Però è anche una bella opportunità di scendere su un terreno comune, no?
Assolutamente,
E poi avere qua lui, poi avere tutte queste ricostruzioni, vi ha fatto delle ricostruzioni.
Bellissimo.
Allora, le cose che avete visto, vi faccio un po' perché per me è ovvio, ma per voi no. Ma allora, praticamente ha fatto vedere quasi 1000 anni di evoluzione, da Gandhara, cioè fino al X-XII secolo. Okay? La cosa super interessante, che è l'ossessione del momento, mi sto rompendo il cazzo su questa cosa, è questo testo di Eugene Wong sull'immagine buddista come medium nella costruzione proprio iconica del buddismo in Cina, okay? Che è cambiata completamente dall'India, quando poi è entrato attraverso i canali ovviamente della Via della Seta, no? Perché quello è stato il canale per cui sono entrate, il buddismo è entrato. Sono due canali, quello del nord che attraverso il deserto del Taj Mahal e quello del sud attraverso le rotte navali, okay? Che è entrato poi in maniera un po' diversa nella regione del Fujian, che è una delle regioni più a sud vicino a Hong Kong, per darvi l'idea. Ma quello che ha fatto vedere è proprio questo passaggio dal Gandhara, che ovviamente è un unicum di sincretismo tra l'ellenismo e Taxila, tutta questa, che è Pakistan-India, molto a nord, e che ha portato proprio l'idea di un'iconografia antropomorfa nel buddismo, che era praticamente assente, o comunque non era completamente assente, comunque era, diciamo, abbastanza... Ma il passaggio da lì, quindi siamo IV secolo a.C., a le immagini che ci ha fatto vedere del VI secolo, sono passati quasi 1000 anni. E c'è stato questo silenzio proprio, cioè non silenzio, ma un'evoluzione iconografica, sincretica, assurda, che passava attraverso tutte anche delle rappresentazioni di Sassani, cioè avete sentito, cioè tutto quella, quindi tutta la parte del Centro Asia, tutto quello che era anche la cultura, per esempio, tardo-romana del secondo secolo, dove i colori e i segni, quando si vedono nella parte sud vicino a Kucha, che è questa zona a sud del Taj Mahal, che ci sono questi templi buddisti, dove sembra di essere a Bisanzio, ok? Cioè delle robe che ti vanno, cioè sembra di vedere Ravenna, non in mosaico, a volte un po', ma non in mosaico, comunque a Ravenna tutto con terre e colori a tempera, e tu li guardi e ti sembra di vedere Cristo con
Sì,
tutti gli apostoli, eccetera, eccetera, e invece è tutta roba buddista, capito? Cioè, sono degli svarioni mica, devo dire che quando li vedevo avevo dei momenti così. Esatto. Poi c'è questa cosa incredibile, e questo vi mando il testo, anzi l'ho già mandato a Michela e a Sara, per cui magari lo condividete. Questo testo secondo me è seminalissimo perché mi ha proprio cambiato completamente lo sguardo rispetto all'iconografia buddista e come è entrato in Cina, che c'era questo pezzo che mi mancava. Per cui ha fatto vedere queste grotte di Dunhuang coloratissime, eccetera, dove c'era queste immagini, cioè la parte, diciamo, templare che era fatta nelle cave, no? Che il buddismo nasce all'interno, soprattutto ad Ajanta, in quella zona, al VII secolo a.C., sono tutte costruzioni di spazi all'interno di grotte che venivano scavate all'interno della grotta, in cui poi le immagini diventavano delle specie di immagini rarefatte, perché pochissima luce, quindi tu le vedevi solo con quella, immaginare con la luce delle candele, quindi era tutta una specie di immagini ieratiche, no? In Cina entra questa cosa, di questa rappresentazione buddista in una cava indiana, che evidentemente ha avuto un grandissimo impatto emotivo, anche perché si instaura ovviamente il buddismo su tutte le tradizioni precedenti, che sono appunto, come dire, basate su taoismi, su altre filosofie, perché non sono mai religioni, sono sempre filosofie, perché c'è anche questa cosa da proprio cambiare. E quindi l'immagine del Buddha diventava il medium stesso per il fedele per avvicinarsi, il medium pittorico, ma il medium, come dicevo prima, di passaggio della divinità verso di te, no? E quindi queste immagini che lui descriveva di queste grotte che diventavano, in cui era come se la pietra diventasse una specie di...
le sembianze.
Sì, ma proprio come se venisse impresso, capito? La presenza che è già assenza del Buddha. Sono concettualmente delle robe forti. E poi quest'idea ovviamente dell'immagine centrale e della deambulazione intorno, questa cosa è anche e della ritualità del tempo.
Mi ha fatto venire in mente Varallo,
I Sacrimonti, anche a me.
C'è anche questa cosa qua, sì, sì. Però perché sono poi cose antropologicamente presenti in tutti gli aspetti, no, della ritualità umana. Però è molto interessante che poi quello diventa, queste composizioni scultoree collettive e poi si sviluppa invece in uno spazio geometrico, come dire, astratto che ha fatto vedere alla fine. Quindi volevo soltanto dirvi questa cosa.
Trovo che è un aspetto che per noi non è così automatico, è anche il fatto di approcciare questi sistemi di rappresentazione che nella nostra cultura, anche devozionale, hanno sempre un'impronta fortemente narrativa rispetto a un contesto come quello orientale in cui non c'è la finalità narrativa, ma è un'essenza di natura diversa.
Sì
Cioè,
e
non
no.
è così automatico. Poi è vero che per noi la narrazione ha anche un valore di natura divina, no? Di quello che osservi,
quello
però,
certo.
esatto, però il peso, cioè pesa più da un lato, no? Mentre invece in quello che noi abbiamo visto, anche nei casi che lui ci ha rappresentato, è l'essenza di ciò che vedi che prevale rispetto alla dinamica narrativa delle azioni.
Sì, avete visto solo delle parti, perché se tu vedi, allora ci sono anche un po' una cosa che sarebbe da fare un bel viaggio ad un quanto.
Why not?
No?
Dove allora questo diciamo sono ci fate vedere delle parti estremamente piccole legate a quel contesto che dici tu. Poi dovete pensare anche al fatto che comunque la storia delle religioni passa anche attraverso le narrative, le narrazioni che sono più volgari, nel senso che sono la volgarizzazione di alcuni aspetti molto più complessi. E questo se lo vedi, che ne so, anche in early Medioevo, se pensi a, come si dice, a Torcello, per esempio, no? I pazzeschi affreschi nella chiesa, quando tu entri proprio sul portale, e se tu vedi alcune immagini invece di alcune grotte in cui ti fanno vedere per esempio tutte le vite del Buddha Sakyamuni, tutte le reincarnazioni eccetera, quelle sono ovviamente, e questo è esattamente uguale,
la stessa cosa.
è la stessa cosa che è quello diciamo della propedeutica religiosa, no? Al devoto, non a chi si occupa di livelli superiori di conoscenza.
E anche in noi in realtà convivono quei due aspetti, nella cultura occidentale convivono assolutamente,
sempre.
perché certo.
Però questo secondo me è una cosa molto interessante, questo passaggio pazzesco tra ovviamente come dire, cioè anche per voi questo trapasso da un'idea di queste statue come delle statue che rappresentano tutta una serie di simbologie in qualche modo ovviamente asiatico-orientali, perché orientale per me è molto difficile da usare come parola, quando invece dall'altra parte del mondo hanno proprio dei significati diversi anche rispetto alla provenienza geografica, che è super interessante, e poi anche all'idea per esempio dell'oggetto stesso e di come l'oggetto in realtà è un oggetto devozionale per qualcosa, no? E che in realtà non ha bisogno di essere conservato, ma viene sostituito progressivamente. Quello è anche abbastanza forte come tale, per cui appunto anche in Giappone, se tu vai a Kikakuji a Tokyo, il monastero dorato ogni 12 anni viene rifatto completamente nuovo.
Ti chiedo scusa se faccio una domanda molto banale, ma in che misura esiste un interesse da parte della comunità culturale, scientifica, orientale a prendere in esame anche un iter diverso di valutazione dell'oggetto storico, no? Perché da un punto di vista devozionale di utilizzo questa tendenza al rifacimento, no, è più nota. Ma esiste una sfera di interesse che è paragonabile? Ecco.
Certo. No,
che è
certo,
più esatto.
È conservativo, in un certo senso,
Sì, sì, sì.
preservazione di quella memoria storica. Ecco.
Sì, anzi, c'è un
Quindi anche più
grandissimo
interessata a
interesse.
fissare la storicizzazione delle tecniche, cioè
Beh,
chiaro
quello
che c'è una
c'è,
storia dell'arte.
bisognerebbe appunto, e secondo me è molto
Mm.
interessante, ma poi con tutti quelli che passeranno, vedranno. Perché ci sarà anche Laura Vigo che viene tra poco, ci sarà insomma una serie di persone che passeranno in questi mesi, che secondo me è interessante, no? Un pezzo alla volta. Subito.
In questa riflessione.
Sì.
Ma mi sono chiesta, no? Se diciamo tutti gli strati hanno valore, a un certo punto tu diciamo, trasmuti quasi le sembianze di queste figure. C'è un momento in cui dicono effettivamente basta, o tolgono tutto e ricominciano da capo.
Cioè, questo è esattamente il punto
Non riesco a capire perché se siamo VI secolo, a un certo punto arrivano nel 2022, ci saranno N strati.
Esatto, però infatti, oppure vengono sostituite.
A un certo punto
Comunque, posso dire,
Prego.
almeno è stranissimo per loro, per esempio, fanno i saggi stratigrafici, quindi tu vedi tutto il saggio stratigrafico, parlo per esempio dell'esterno, no, di un tempio, e vedi, non so, 10, 12 livelli, e poi ridipingono tutto. Capito? Cioè, loro hanno questa contezza comunque di vedere le fasi, ce l'hanno, solo che credo che la dimensione, e tu mi insegni Davide, la dimensione come dire, spirituale anche del Tempio supera l'aspetto storico, e quindi comunque ancora oggi nel 2022 lo ridipingono tutto.
Oppure arriverà a un certo punto che toglieranno tutto e
Allora,
da capo, non penso che ogni volta
così tanti strati.
No, allora un secondo però, bisogna cambiare, cioè sono livelli diversi. Allora, ovviamente anche le tecniche di restauro sono cambiate negli ultimi 30 anni. Cioè, se andavi al Giocana all'inizio degli anni 90, venivi inorridito perché usavano, mettevano proprio neanche dell'acrilico, cioè delle colle proprio...
Le lacche.
Sì, delle lacche artificiali allucinanti, capito, che ti metteva l'ansia, cioè questo anche a Pechino tantissimo. Poi adesso invece hanno recuperato altre cose, quindi questo ovviamente...
No, non intendevo questo, è che nella prassi probabilmente anche nell'evoluzione del contatto della persona con la scultura, questa scultura, immagino essere la scultura lignea, non l'architettura, la scultura lignea, sommando gli strati seppur raffinati, cambia la sua forma, inevitabilmente. Quindi ci deve essere stata una prassi o qualcuno, non so con quale diciamo, spirito o valutazione, che o toglie tutto o ricostruisce una scultura totalmente nuova. E anche questo tipo di valutazioni
questo non ti so rispondere, bisogna parlarne. È una prassi, però dello sviluppo. Sì, però poi quando ci fate vedere queste statue giapponesi del XIII secolo, bellissime, in cui si vedevano cioè il fatto che non sono stati fatti mai interventi sopra. Mentre quelle che abbiamo visto tutte le altre è proprio super rimanente in maniera molto grossolana, no?
Fino alla trasfigurazione delle forme, no?
Sì, però probabilmente toglieranno, non lo so.
E poi forse un'altra cosa anche delle professioni mi incuriosisce, no? Come sono distribuite le professionalità, chi può far cosa, se c'è poi un conservatore come immagineremo noi, c'è una sorta di supervisor che comunque viene e come sono distribuite queste
allora,
ruoli?
quello potremmo anche far intervenire, perché mi hanno dato questo nome di questa bravissima conservatrice di Xi'an, che si occupa, tra le altre cose, dei guerrieri di terracotta, per esempio. E che lei ha molta voglia di fare delle cose, perché come voi fate queste domande, dall'altra parte immagino ci sia lo stesso tipo di domanda, no? Nel senso, perché fare, cioè dove fermarsi, cosa fare, quali tipi di materiali usare, perché essere, non so, perché essere reversibili, non so. Quando tu sai che quello dovrebbe essere il colore finale, perché non glielo dai su tutto? Non so come dire.
Certo, i criteri con cui si muovono.
E secondo me è interessante capire quella cosa lì, non sono risposte che do perché non sono un tecnico, però secondo me questo processo è proprio il processo che mi sembra che con Sara si stia iniziando anche in questa dimensione qui, cioè di esplorazione di possibilità proprio di comprensione di conoscenze, no? Che hanno senso. Però insomma, mi è sembrato molto utile, no? Avere
è un inizio
È stato tanto
eccezionale.
chiarissimo, c'è molta difficoltà dei temi, molto chiaro.
Poi sì, ci sono cose che se avete visto, cioè tipo Arat, che sono le figure quelle molto rovinate,
sì.
queste sono delle figure di santi che normalmente sono proprio allineati in maniera molto marziale intorno. Ci sono, vabbè, Bodhisattva è la figura del Buddha che decide di rimanere su questa terra finché tutti gli esseri senzienti siano liberati. Poi ci sono tante altre cose che però se avete bisogno, tanto prima o poi qualche cosa.
C'è un fantastico libro che c'è al nostro bookshop, che è Capire il buddismo, che fa una sintesi super fantastica con anche delle immagini.
Ah, sì?
Per cui è proprio
prontuario.
La parte sulla rappresentazione del buddismo.
E quello
Bene, siamo stati perfetti poi, 12:30 come volevamo.
Fantastico. Bene,
Sì.
chiudiamo qui allora?
Sì.
Valeria,
Grazie.
A tutti, non so chi ce l'ha, ma insomma vi ringrazio.
Valeria, segnati 25-26 luglio perché uno di questi 2 giorni potrebbe essere l'incontro.
No, non giugno, luglio.
Luglio, ok, 25-26 luglio. Ok, perfetto. Grazie molto di avermi invitata.
No, ma figurati Valeria, l'idea potrebbe essere quella di organizzare un webinar anche aperto all'esterno con lui e poi fare un momento più di laboratorio workshop intorno alle opere qui in laboratorio.
Sì, bello.
Ti piace?
Bello.
Anche perché
poi magari vedere anche il gabinetto cinese.
Dai, sì.
E anche
Visto
perché
che avete parlato di Coromandel.
Anche perché a quel punto saprò più o meno come sarà la disposizione delle statue nello spazio e che cosa gli faremo alle statue.
Va bene.
Da un punto di vista proprio del display. Grazie a tutti, ciao.
Va bene. Grazie, ciao, arrivederci. Grazie. Ciao a tutte. Ciao Sara, ciao Paola, ciao Michela, ciao.
Ciao a tutte da Roberta del MAO, ciao.